Hi guys, my name is Oscar, this is Adam, and we're here to break down Doctor Who Series 11, Episode 5, The Tsuranga Conundrum.
If you haven't seen the episode, definitely make sure to check it out first, as we're going to be diving into all the spoilers and breaking down all the Easter eggs that we saw in this week's episode. Right, let's get into it.
Tsuranga.
Why have they done that?
I know that name. Where have I heard the name Tsuranga?
Alright Adam, we're well into the depths of Series 11 now.
Yeah.
We've reached Episode 5. What were your initial thoughts of the Tsuranga Conundrum?
So, watching this episode, it's a really, it's a weird one, because the first 20 minutes I found to be very slow and quite, average for a Doctor Who episode, just bog standard. I felt it was like a really deeply flawed episode, and it had a lot of inconsistencies, plot holes, and it was just daft, right? I was almost going to write it off at the halfway mark.
Wow,
and,
really?
Yeah, I think it was just really weak. But by the end of it, I really got caught up in the adventure of it all, right? I just sort of found I kind of looked past the silliness of the monster and was caught up in sort of the heart of the episode, the melodrama, the adventure. It was just, the characters felt quite nuanced, bizarrely, for just these sort of ragtag bunch of doctors and patients, and I kind of got caught up in their arcs, and I think that carried the episode for me to a satisfying conclusion, despite its flaws and that sort of lackluster start.
That's interesting that you say that, because I was actually the other way round in that I started off quite invested in it and I liked the slow pace of it, and by the end I was just sort of a bit bored. I liked the characterization. I think you're right in that the characters were developed quite well and their arcs were good, but I think overall, I don't know, I felt like this episode was a huge missed opportunity, and I'm sure we'll get into that later on.
So this episode kicks off with Team TARDIS on a junkyard of sorts. It sounds like they've been on a couple of adventures pre to the last time we've seen them, but here they soon encounter a sonic mine, which
It's kind of breezed over a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a weird one. It kind of causes a significant amount of damage, we're told, to them, but suddenly they're on this hospital ship, and they are suffering the effects of this sonic mine. And we find out quickly that this ship is the Tsuranga Corporation's sort of hospital, flying space hospital, if you will.
Tsuranga. This isn't a hospital. It's a ship. And we're already in flight.
They're kind of like a Red Cross of sorts in space.
Essentially, yeah, it was a bit weird that, I thought.
Yeah, and quickly the story just goes, forget about that sonic mine accident, let's just completely drift past that and get on with the main meat of the plot, which is kind of alien on a hospital.
It starts
space.
off it becomes Alien essentially at the start, and then even that is kind of forgotten when we find out that the monster is not really that threatening.
And aboard this ship is where we meet the episode's kind of core cast of characters. We've got the medic team of Astos and Mably. So Astos is in charge, and we've got Mably's sort of his deputy sort of apprentice. And then we meet the patients as well. So we've got Yos, a man who is pregnant, which is just a crazy concept. Yeah. And then we've got Eve Cicero, who's this sort of respected space captain who is suffering from a disease called pilot's heart. And she's sort of with her brother Dirkus, who's very suspicious of her and her disease. And they're both attended by this sort of weird-looking android guy called Ronan.
When she says consort, she really means clone drone. Android, you can tell by the hair.
Dirkus.
And I think that one of this episode's biggest strong points is how well it characterises these people and gives them proper arcs over the course of, a piece of 50-minute television. Yos at the start is really struggling with the daunting task of having to father a child, and by the end he's willing to accept his child and not give him away. And you've got Eve, who obviously sadly dies, spoilers, but her brother and her android are left actually kind of respecting one another at the end, whereas at the start they hate each other. And even Mably at the start, she's very nervous and doesn't think she can handle the responsibility of being in charge of this ship. And by the end, she has successfully kept most of the people on board safe.
Yeah, it's really smart writing, actually. I know a lot of people sort of have kind of come down on Chris Chibnall and saying, the writing's not that great in this season, and I can definitely see their point in some regards, but to set up 4 or 5 characters there in a 50-minute episode, set them up, kind of have sort of satisfying payoffs and relatively decent character arcs is quite a tricky ordeal, right? And this episode seems to juggle all those things alongside, developing the Doctor, which, is a big thing, and even giving some nice character moments for people like Ryan.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there are actually quite a lot of plot holes in this episode and sort of loose threads that aren't really tied up by the end. So we mentioned the sonic mine, that's never mentioned again, and all the characters, despite being woken up halfway through their recovery, are seemingly fine, apart from the Doctor, who's struggling at the start, and then that's never really touched on again. I thought there was going to be something towards the end where, her injury means that she can't save whoever, but that's never really mentioned.
Yeah, it's kind of just sort of swept under the carpet, really, and it's kind of a bit weird how it does that.
My ectospleen hurts. I can feel it resettling.
The other one that I found bizarre, it just feels like a narrative contrivance, right? Like just adding in manufactured peril is the constant ship blowing up thing, right? Like they're like, oh, if we divert off course, the ship will blow up because corporation back home will destroy us. It's like every 5 minutes it felt like there was like, oh no, we can't do that because the ship will blow up.
Yeah, exactly.
And then like the ship suddenly, after all the stresses of like the Batang like destroying it, it was like, oh, the ship's gonna blow up. It's on a self-control, self-detonation.
Like, why, if it's a hospital ship, why would the company running it, they're seemingly a charity, right? They compare them to the Red Cross. Why would they want to blow up their own hospital?
Yeah, and surely that ship costs a fortune, right?
Yeah.
Why would you blow it up? Why wouldn't you
Just because they took a wrong turn?
I know, it's, I don't know, like, that's what I was saying, like, it's a really sort of weird episode that has some great strong writing and then some just very weird, weak writing as well.
So our monster of the week this week was the Pting, which is a weird name for a weird creature. It's like this goblin gremlin thing that looks a bit like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, or the Nibbler from Futurama.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of the Adipose actually from Series 4 of Doctor Who, or even the Slitheen from Series 1.
Yeah, it definitely had like that Russell T Davies vibe to it, I think. It was just sort of like a very cute, I could see it turning into a toy, which is a bit cynical of me, but it does look like that,
All
right?
for the merchandise, isn't it?
Yeah. But like, I think when the episode was kind of demanding a little bit of menace, a little bit of threat, the monster just delivered daftness, right? It was just a silly monster. It kind of made the episode feel a little bit like a parody of sorts, and it kind of lent into that a bit. I think it was kind of going for that in some regards. The slapstick kind of came kind of thick and fast. So we had like the drop kick down the corridor.
That was a weird moment.
It was very bizarre. And like we had the sequence where I wanted to call it the Nibbler. But no, it's not the Nibbler, but it is effectively the Nibbler.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it the Nibbler. So we had the sequence where the Nibbler ate the bomb. And while it was like quite funny and cute, it just looked really silly in a way. And it just sort of ate the bomb, blew up, and it was just like, well, that was a good bomb.
I think my problem with the Nibbler, as we're now calling it, is that it never really felt threatening. Like even before we find out that it's just interested in energy, which I kind of saw coming anyway, it never really felt threatening to our cast of humans. I was kind of, I think this is why I enjoyed the first half of the episode more than the second half, because the first half felt to me like it was going to be Alien, but via Doctor Who, if that makes sense. I thought it was going to be this mystery, venomous, disgusting creature that was going to hunt them down, and it was going to become like a slasher film, essentially. I thought it was going to be a very horror-orientated episode, and instead what we got was this daft thing that is not menacing at all and looks kind of more comedic than threatening. And I thought that was a really hugely wasted opportunity. And there were other shades of Alien in there as well. There was like the android and like this mysterious corporation, and it could so easily have been such a good episode. Yeah. And it just took so many wrong turns.
I mean, I wouldn't say it had like wrong turns. Like I don't think. I mean, that episode would be great. I would really very much enjoy an Alien sort of episode. But it for me felt, I kind of embraced it, right? And it felt like it was kind of Doctor Who by way of like Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or even Monty Python. Like nowhere near as funny or silly as those, but like it just had that daftness to it, right? And when I bought into that, I was like, okay, cool. It's taking this and turning it into something silly, I kind of just went along for that ride, and maybe that was the reason why I enjoyed that second half more than you did.
So Adam, we're now halfway through this series. I think it's a fair time to reassess Jodie Whittaker's Doctor and her performance as the Doctor.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are your thoughts on her as a character?
I mean, it's a weird one, right? Because this series so far has kind of had episodes that are very key to other characters in the sort of ensemble, and we haven't had that Doctor-centric episode until now, I think. Like, this episode did feel like sort of Jodie Whittaker's Doctor was kind of in the spotlight. And it really kind of helped us to see, you know, a couple more shades of her character. We're kind of seeing her sort of emerge or move into more of that inspirational figure that we've seen other actors inhabit the role as. And we've also started to see a bit more of that mischievous side. So there was a lot of big speechy moments in this one, like where she's talking to Mabley and she's like,
"People prevail. Hope prevails."
And I like some of that stuff. I also like the stuff like where she was saying, "Oh, I'm a doctor of all these different things, including weird stuff like Lego."
You're a medic. I'm the doctor.
A doctor of medicine?
Well, medicine, science, engineering, candy floss, Lego, philosophy, music, problems, people, hope. Mostly hope.
I like her sense of humour, definitely. It feels very silly, and I think that's where the Tennant comparisons are coming in so much. What I'm not liking so much at the moment is the inspirational side of it. I don't know why, because that has been a part of previous Doctors, but I'm noticing it more this time. I don't know whether it's the writing or the performance, or the direction maybe. I can't put my finger on what it is that I'm not liking, but it feels like at the moment every line that she says has to be either has to be a groundbreaking moment for the plot, or it has to be an inspirational speech to bring everyone together. And it's like, I just want her to be allowed to sort of just chat, do you know what I mean? And not be either cracking a joke or making some huge moment. Because that's what it feels like. The camera and the show is treating every line for her as this huge thing, and it needs to just sort of be toned down a little bit for me. But on the whole, I am really enjoying this series, and Jodie Whittaker herself. I think she has generally been very good. Yeah,
I think all in all, I think she's slowly starting to settle into that role. I think so far the series has all been about, you know, laying the groundwork, or the foundations for what Doctor Who is, right? You know, like, it's setting up lots of different things for a new generation of viewers. And I think, like, establishing Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor has been kind of a bit lower down on those list of priorities, especially in the last couple of episodes. So I think, you know, we're now starting to see her actually make an impact in that role.
So when it comes to Team TARDIS, our cast of companions, they seem to mostly take a back seat for this episode in favour of having the focus on the Doctor and on the new characters that we were introduced to. But there were some moments here and there of characterisation and development. So what did you think of how this episode treated our cast of...
the Team TARDIS.
Team TARDIS, yeah.
I think largely, like, we saw like Yaz and Graham kind of sidelined. But I think there was some really nice development of Ryan's character. I think we're starting to see him sort of talk through some of his daddy issues. You know, that chat with Yaz was quite a good sort of way of developing that sort of aspect of his character.
I never knew life threw that sort of stuff at you. I never knew that when it does, sometimes adults don't cope either.
And then we had like that, the scene with him helping Jos to obviously give birth and kind of come to terms with fatherhood as sort of a nice counter to how he sees his relationship with his own father. And I like that. I like how they're giving that character several different, you know, different like flavours to his
layers,
character.
Aren't there? And although I like Ryan, he's so inconsistent as a character for me that, and I'm finding that quite annoying. Like, I think moments like that, I really like him, and you can see the development in his character, but they seem to try and counteract that or juxtapose that with these moments of really like overstated silliness. And it's like that I find sort of a bit jarring. It's like sometimes it feels like he's either being miswritten or has been miscast as like too old an actor. I feel like sometimes he acts like a 14-year-old where he's not. He's meant to be 19. And it's like it's a bit too overt for me at times. It's too heavy-handed. But in general, I do really like him, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they take his arc for the rest of the series.
You're right. If your nan could see us now, eh?
She'd be laughing herself crazy.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look at some of the Easter eggs from the Tsuranga Conundrum.
So the main Easter egg that I spotted this week was a massive blink and you'll miss it moment. When the computer is analysing the pting, we get a very brief glimpse of several other Doctor Who monsters, including the Cybermen, the Ood, the Weeping Angels, the Sontarans, the Slitheen, the Silence, the Zygon, and even the original 70s version of the Silurian.
This being a hospital in space, we got a fair few references to some of the BBC's other medical dramas, including a specific call-out to Call the Midwife from Graham.
Oh yeah, I've seen every episode of Call the Midwife.
And less overtly, but actress Suzanne Packer is most famous for her role as Tess Bateman in Casualty.
Going back to our alien comparison from earlier, this shot of the Pting being ejected from the airlock is almost exactly like the alien being ejected from the first Alien film.
The Doctor's sonic screwdriver has been eaten a couple of times before, most notably in A Christmas Carol by a giant Christmassy space shark.
We saw the stethoscope come out for the first time in ages this episode. It hasn't been used since Matt Smith, but over the years it's been used plenty by the 2nd, 4th and 10th Doctors.
And lastly, Siobhan Chamberlain was mentioned by Yaz when she punts the Pting down the corridor. And this is a reference to the England Ladies International goalkeeper.
Siobhan Chamberlain with a goal kick for England.
All right, let's have a look at some of your comments from last week's episode, Arachnids in the UK. One that I found quite interesting was one that refers to our discussion, well, mine and Bill's, a discussion about Yaz and the Doctor. And it goes like this, Yaz and the Doctor, LMAO, no. Doctor should not be in a relationship. River's an exception because she is a time traveller and Time Lord, so it makes sense. They hinted it for Rose very, very much, and even that was not official. They are part of a group. If they liked each other, it would make her the Doctor's favourite. And just like in Sarah Jane, I think they should have no favourite in the group. The Doctor should view everyone in Team TARDIS equal.
That's a fair point. I wouldn't be opposed to there being a relationship. But I don't know, that moment, I didn't really... I found it quite a nice sort of little joke, and that's all I saw it as, really, just a gag.
Yeah, I think the commenter makes a good point about how, like, everyone on the team should be sort of equal. And I think like if there was a relationship dynamic added into that, I think it would kind of, you know, sour that sort of whole sort of team dynamic in favour of something that I don't think would be adding too much to those characters' development.
That's a fair point. Another interesting comment from last week comes from Sarah Inglis, who says, "So many issues with this episode."
All caps.
All caps. Chris Noth's Trump-liked character was too cringeworthy and over the top for me. Seems like the British audience found it generally amusing, but it was very uncomfortable for me, an American. It was a heavy-handed, shallow attempt at a stereotypical gun-toting, narcissistic American. I think Sarah makes a good point.
Yeah.
It was very over the top, but I don't know. America, from our perspective, is only ever seen through the lens of a TV camera, so it's kind of already over the top and fake. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it didn't really register with me too much that this character was so out of place. But yes, it was a very over-the-top character.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely understand that because obviously not all Americans are at all like that. And America is definitely not like some gun-crazy place, or all Americans aren't gun-crazy, that's for sure. He was just very much a caricature, I think. He was very much just like the silliest, you know, most crazy caricature of like a gun-toting man, businessman. Yeah, Trump, yeah.
Please don't mention that name.
All right, so that was it for our breakdown of the Tsuranga Conundrum.
Oh, it's such a horrible title.
I've messed up a lot of these links. Make sure to let us know your thoughts on the episode in the comments below, or you can come and find us on Twitter. I'm at DeusZ.
I'm at Adam Rees-Mays. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.